So good morning, everyone. Good evening for who's watching us from a different time frame. Welcome to another fantastic webisode of our Quo Vadis Tourism series. And we are extremely happy now since we began, I think 2 months have gone, 2 months in lockdown. All of us in different parts of the world, and we at UNWTO have been trying our best to keep our member states and we hope also a larger audience busy with our webinars where we try to reflect and investigate key items. Now we are, in a phase that today the European Commission will release some news about the reaction to supporting tourism. We're waiting for the 15th of June as possibly a date to reopen the circulation within the European Union. Some countries have already done that. Some other countries in other parts of the world are unfortunately still suffering very much. Nevertheless, I think we cannot avoid saying that we are definitely talking about recovery, yes, but we're also talking about restarting, which is always very encouraging. So first of all, welcome everybody. Welcome to my fantastic speakers. Today, we're going to be focusing on Agenda 2030 and the SDGs in times of COVID. And we're being very ambitious here, the chance to true recovery. Isn't it, Zoritza? I am very, very pleased here to be joined in this series of webinars. As you know, I am always a humble introducer here, and I would like to facilitate the discussion amongst fantastic speakers that are here with us, starting with my esteemed colleague Zoritza Orozovic, who is lucky enough, I would say, to sit in Geneva at the moment. Yes, correct, Zoritza? Hello, can you hear me, Zoritza?
Yes, thank you, Alessandra. Yes, I'm in Geneva, sunny.
Yes, Zoritza is she does many things. She represents us in all the UN agencies, the UN agency platform. She's also the director of the Institutional Relations Department and the Resource Mobilization, AKA she does a lot. When sometimes, Zoritza, when we have long titles, it's difficult to make people understand that we're very practical. We're very practical and we do a lot of things. Anyhow, Zoritza has been following up directly for UNWTO, but of course within the framework of the United Nations, the Sustainable Development Goals. She also launched a series of very, very important initiatives that she will illustrate to us. Before introducing our esteemed panelists, Zoritza, grant me this honor. I would like to just remind all the viewers of our webinars the rules of the game. I'm going to leave the floor to you for your moderation and for your articulation of the discussion with such panelists. And then after, I would say 45 to 50 minutes, I will try to squeeze back in and with some questions coming from the audience, which normally is very, very active and dynamic, especially when we talk of topics of such wide impact. Everyone now is talking about SDGs, from the higher institutions to the smaller destinations. Everyone understands that really we have a chance here that we need to use for our own benefits. So without further ado, I would like to introduce and thank, while I'm introducing, Dr. Susanne Becken, who is a professor of sustainable tourism at the Griffith Institute for Tourism in Australia. Correct, Susanne? What time is in Australia now?
I'm pretending to be on the Gold Coast, but I'm really in New Zealand. So it's 10 o'clock in the evening.
You're even in a better place.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have Professor Teharis Soutsos, who is Director of Renewable and Sustainable Energy Lab at the School of Environmental Engineering at the Technical University of Crete in Greece. Welcome, Teharis.
Good morning, Alexandra. Good morning, all. Thank you for the invitation.
Good morning, Kalimera. And we have Mr. David Ehrman, who is a senior tourism expert, international tourism consultant, trainer and managing director of Destination Capacity Limited in New Zealand. Hello, David.
Thank you. Good morning or good evening here.
Good morning and good evening, exactly. And
Thank
we
you
have
for having me.
our pleasure, David. And we have Michaela Reiterer. She's the owner of the boutique hotel Stadthalle and president of the Austrian Hotelier Association. I'm so happy to have you, Michaela, with us. Thank you for joining.
Hello.
Hello. And then last but not least, we have Dr. Peter Prokosch, who's the founder and chairman of the board Linking Tourism and Conservation, which is LTAC in Norway. Hello, Peter. Thank you for being with
Hello,
us.
Alessandra. Happy to be with you.
And I love the fact that you all have, Zoritsa, look how beautiful our panelists, they all have this fantastic backdrops. Maybe we should do the same. We should think it's something, you know, very exciting. I've been having this library behind me now for the last 3 months and a half. So I think I should definitely do the same. So without further ado, now it's 12:06. I've exceeded one limit of my introduction. I leave the floor to my fantastic colleague Zoritsa to manage this discussion, which I will be quietly and humbly listening and taking lots of notes, I guess, like the rest of the people listening to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexandra, and thank you to all for joining us today. When you started to talk to me about let's organize a webinar on tourism and SDGs, I was rather surprised because I think that we're so deep dive in the crisis that that was just refreshing. So I think that we start to see some light out of the tunnel, and I can say sunshine is with us. I think it's a great moment to go back to, I can say, the broader world and the broader scope, and to see how much this crisis is actually bringing us a lot of opportunities. Because now, today, there is no one place in the world, no one country that doesn't pay attention or value tourism. I think that crisis, we have to turn it into positive. And while we are moving ahead, I think that looking at what this crisis has disrupted gives a great opportunity to actually go further and grow better for the next steps. So the people I have chosen to join us today come from different horizons, different spheres of knowledge and expertise, all led by passion. And I think that this is all about that today. It is like a conversation that is going to bring us maybe to another realm of thinking and inspire us all so that we can move ahead and continue our great work and our great undertakings. Do you want me to maybe just share with everyone few aspects of what we are going to do today?
Indeed, Zoritsa. I think also, I mean, I personally am very interested with the possibility of having a go on your Tourism for SDG platform. I hope we'll have a chance to see it, because I think this is also very relevant for our member states, but not only for our member states, for all the people that are listening to us live on YouTube.
Thank you, Alessandra. We will go there, because I think this is an amazing co-creation space for everyone. Yes, today we are looking at what will be eventually the future and what will be maybe certainly the future, because we have seen that the disruption of the crisis has provided us with an incredible capacity to adapt, to live confined, differently, having distance. So maybe we can as well live differently tomorrow when we travel, and paying more attention to the planet and for the people around us. So the crisis here has been giving us the opportunity to look at the Sustainable Development Goals, and I say some of them have been a threat. Health of the goal 3, 8 on the economic recovery and jobs, 9 on innovation, 10 on inequality. I think the crisis has even given more deep dive into the inequality aspects, because it is the people that have the less that have suffered the more and that are suffering the more. 12, sustainable consumption and production. Climate, we have seen beautiful pictures of blue skies and not polluted planet. It is possible, of course, at a cost or at an economic cost. Goal 14, life below water and oceans, and biodiversity, goal 15. And I think everything that we are talking about is an amazing opportunity for effective partnerships. So today, we look at how we can survive, because this is the immediate need. Many people, 100 to 120 million of people have lost their jobs or at the point to lose their jobs. We need to look at that first. Social fraud protection, because some people, and we know 60% of the people are working in an informal sector when it comes to tourism. So how do we project ourselves and lift our hands towards the Sustainable Development Goals, which is the global framework for sustainability? And I think that while we are reviewing our business models, I think we have the opportunity as well to rethink the entire tourism ecosystem. So a strong commitment to action will be needed, and we will not be able to do it alone. Hotelier will not be able to do it alone. Airlines will not be able to do it alone. Government cannot do it alone. Banks cannot do it alone. We really need each other. So our proposition is to really have an insight with the various views and horizon we are bringing together today to explore how we can integrate sustainability during recovery, how we can empower stakeholders and stimulate a dialogue, and how we can inspire action to embrace a new development model. So, sorry. I have a little, no, sorry, it's, I'm sorry, it's my, yes. So the overall recommendation we are putting forward for the sector is really like the most important today is to provide liquidity. And we have been trying and have been supporting governments and member states, our member states and the industry as a whole to really lobby for having liquidity and protection of jobs. We know it is easier in the EU than it is maybe for other countries, but everybody is really not sparing any effort in doing so. So the recovering confidence of the market is essential. Public-private sector collaboration, opening borders, this is really the key. Harmonize and coordinate protocols and procedures for health. Use technologies for looking at new options and new solutions. And we have been doing a great deal in that sense with a lot of initiatives led by the organization, the UNWTO. And I think that innovation and sustainability might be the new answer. Now, where do we stand and where do we have an opportunity in green investment? Because we know that we have lost about 900 to 910 billion to 1.2 trillion in export revenue. Is it really the time to invest? Maybe. We know that the EU is putting an extremely ambitious package with the European New Green Deal, and many banks, including the biggest international finance institutions, are really shifting the model of borrowing into green investment. Now, I just wanted to share with you where we stand today and where we have an option and an opportunity. We know that shocks from the supply and the demand side has been heavy. The disruption of the ecosystem has been huge. And today, when governments are supporting the industry and the people for tourism recovery, we are looking at financial packages for health and socioeconomic recovery. And we should not forget, and we should eventually explore further how we can include green investment. We know that we will rebuild the sector and build confidence for visitors and the market, but maybe we can build trust as well. We can build a different type of approach to travel, which can be fully fostering sustainability and inclusive growth. Sorry, it's my, do you see my screen? Sorry. Oh. Yes. Apologies for the technology. Now, Here is the huge value chain of tourism. And I think that here we have an amazing opportunity to guide government in securing those opportunities and incentives for investment. Level, we have innovation and digitalization, which can be one of the solutions. And with government in securing those, definitely need to develop a more inclusive low carbon model. Inclusive because I think we need as well to think and to rethink social for protection, decent jobs for people, and especially for the more defavorized one. Let me share with you what we have been doing as the United Nations Organization for Tourism. We have been very involved in the shaping of the Sustainable Development Goals, and we have succeeded as an organization and the lobbying power we have with our members of the United Nations to secure the presence of tourism in 3 Sustainable Development Goals. We have undertaken a major piece of research which has been analyzing national policies called voluntary national reviews, which government puts in place. And we have seen that in many of these national strategies, tourism is included from the central government reporting to the United Nations how they see their strategy in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals. And for government, definitely job creation, decent work, and economic growth is on top of the agenda. But quite interestingly, responsible consumption and production, meaning all means in operations to be sustainable, are number 2. So this is giving a very clear indication that the direction we should be taking is definitely supporting the industry in SCPs, in sustainable consumption and production, through partnerships, and of course, for government and for all the world, sustainable cities and community are at the core. Because we know, for example, for tourism, 75 to 80% of tourism is happening in cities. Now, when it comes to the private sector, we surveyed about 60 global tourism companies coming to trillions of business. We identified that for the companies, responsible consumption and production, when it comes to measure SDGs, what we did is that we identified the connection between the SDGs, the 17 goals, and corporate social responsibility. And we found out that for most of the company, responsible consumption and production, climate action were on the top of their business agenda, meaning that for companies, sustainability goes hand in hand with competitiveness. But what is as well very interesting to see is that companies are developing their business locally, so they have a real interaction with the local communities, and poverty reduction, quality education, and job creation related as well to the supply chain and the value chain are very top on the agenda of the corporate social responsibility strategies. And we know today that many of the companies are actually taking SDGs as a marker when they report their corporate social responsibility or global reporting on sustainability. So we have seen that where the companies invest the most in CSR is when it relates to saving on costs, saving on operation, while in the same time bringing, I can say, a stronger capacity to deliver in the services sector, in the management, and in the social aspect. Of course, people are at the core of a great tourism experience. So the 2 main ways and area in which the engagement has occurred is definitely on sustainability and environmental sustainability, and as well on social sustainability. So what we did, because this is an ongoing research that we have from various ends of the organization, we all know the Sustainable Development Department, the One Planet program, which is leading the way on the sustainable consumption and production, the INSTO observatories, which are measuring impact. What we felt was missing, first, is a better understanding of the goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, and a better understanding of how this can translate as a business opportunity and as a responsible strategy for any government or business sector alike. So we created a platform which is fully running, and this is something that I think many of you have already discovered or already providing inputs. It is a place where you can learn, where you can share, and which is there to inspire you, because basically it is a place where we can exchange and we can engage to advance any part of the agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals. So today, I will try now to go to it. Today, I will try to maybe bring you, we have created a tab, which is, sorry. Do you see the platform on the screen? Hello?
Yes, we do.
Yes?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. So here, the platform is a place where we invite you all to get inspired, learn, and share. We have created a tab, for example, for the COVID, in which people are sharing the most advanced or initiatives or research or opportunities or partnerships. This is a space that we definitely invite you to go on, and that we hope that you can benefit from.
Zorica, may I ask you, my dear, how many countries or projects have already positioned and shared their experiences on the platform?
There is about 80, but it is really, as I said, a co-creation space. So more we populate and more we can exchange. We just actually have been very low in promoting it, because the organization has many entry points for sharing issues on COVID. And I can say that for the time being, people have been much more inclined to look at how they will survive in the industry than what initiative they can share. But what I can say is it is a place where we have a lot of resources which can be extremely useful. And in the same time, it is a place where you can as well promote what you are currently doing. So there is a map, and you can find there are teams, there are different thematics, there are regions and countries, and here it's the place where we have on the COVID. So this is the space that I was just mentioning earlier.
Zorica, if I may ask you, I don't know if this is possible for connection reasons. I think that would also facilitate you when interacting with your with our colleagues and our esteemed guests that are here with us. We don't see you on camera. Would it be possible to,
Yes.
to have your beauty with us?
I would like to stop sharing, but yes.
People have to see your glasses, Zorica. Today I even wear mine to match your glass fashion, you know?
Do you see me now?
No.
Well, I don't. It might be no. I see a black screen.
Now?
No.
There
Yes.
we go.
Now,
Yes.
here you are.
Oh, this is it. So Zorica, thank you so much for sharing all this very precious information. Rest assured that when it comes to promotion, we have learned, I think in UNWTO, but in our life in general, that we should never rely on very much on, you know, on many people, but we somehow have this karma that we have to pull, you know, men push cart, we have to push our cart. And so we're pushing this cart together. We will support you in making sure that Tourism for SDG becomes the most successful and seen platforms of the year. I can assure you that. Now back on to you.
Okay, so we will be now. I would like to invite to be sharing with us some thoughts on aviation, the future of air travel, the future of travel. Susan, maybe you can take the floor.
Thank you, Saritza, and good afternoon, everyone. I think I'm hopefully successfully sharing my screen now. So I would like to share a few thoughts on air travel and how this current very challenging crisis for tourism hopefully can result in some positive outcomes, decarbonization and maybe more travel with a purpose. I just want to start with this, these two images here and just remind ourselves what is actually travel and tourism about, what's the essence of travel, and maybe what it has become and what people actually look for when they go on holiday in particular. And so I took this, Saritza, from your wonderful website with the Sustainable Development Goals, tourism obviously in the middle, and the idea of tourism being a force for good, which I think we're all passionate about. Everyone on this call probably believes that tourism can make an important contribution. I added new economic thinking. I think we have a real opportunity to make some significant changes, and there's some great stuff coming out, donut economics, regenerative tourism, circular economy. So I think we can embrace this. Just a few points here on the left. I think tourism has been seduced by a growth agenda that in the end delivered to few people, but not to everyone. So now is the time to change that. Rebuilding it in the recovery really from the bottom up with a lot of voices being heard, and you mentioned around livelihoods, employment, small businesses, get them back going. We can think about new business models where profit has a purpose and is distributed by design, and where we try to minimize waste and don't just accept it as an externality. So I think there's a real chance to look at those parts of tourism where we really make a contribution, and those parts that have developed in a way that we feel undermine the Sustainable Development Goals. This is a time to put policies in place to limit that. Now, just really briefly about aviation, and I don't want to spend too much time because it's been so much in the media. We know that aviation until this crisis has had phenomenal growth. And with that, of course, major increases in emissions. And so there's been a lot of discussion around how to minimize emissions. Also the aspect of equality, which is so important to the Sustainable Development Goals, has been highlighted. For example, in the UK, the discussions around a frequent flyer levy, where really a small part of the population contributes a lot to the carbon footprint. We released a white paper last year at the Climate Summit on airline initiatives, and we found that a lot of airlines are actually doing, what they can, but it's just so challenging to get the carbon out of air travel with the current technology. So the way forward I see as a true zero carbon fuel is synthetic fuels, maybe complemented by electric airplanes. Not such a fan of biofuel. But I see a big opportunity in the redistribution of tourist flows. And I explained that a little bit further. Now you can see here a world map of carbon emissions from aviation. And I think we might be covering my part of the world. Maybe I'm trying to hide our emissions down here, New Zealand, Australia. You can see a lot of the travel is actually happening between sort of the European countries, America, and then some Asian countries. And in fact, when you look at the global statistics and the emissions, half of the travel, international travel, is actually happening between 10 countries. So talking about inequality of distribution. So it's largely people from the rich countries traveling between each other. And so a lot of countries actually missing out when we think about development opportunities. And if you think about the current lockdown and the COVID crisis, what happened to this global pattern of travel is that we're all pretty much stuck in our country, and travel is becoming more regional again. And while I also hope that we can soon embark on travel, I think there's a real opportunity in this regionalization of tourism. Because the climate footprint of long-haul travel in particular has always been a major Achilles heel. Now, I just show this one here. And so now I do need to move us out of the way a bit. I feel that there's a very good chance that long-term the demand for air travel will continue to be lower. It will recover, but the question is to what levels will it recover? So I don't go into the details here because we don't have the time, but basically the two key factors that drive air travel demand, and there's a lot of research on that, is the GDP in countries of origin, and it's the airfare. When we look at gross domestic product up there, there's all sorts of things that can reduce it. And we all see the statistics in the moment, how obviously GDP is really badly affected by the crisis. It's also leading to government debt, growing inequality. So all of those things do not help people's desire to travel and ability to travel, especially long haul. At the same time, with air travel, we've got obviously price on carbon is still an issue. We've got probably less business travel because people like ourselves now engage maybe more virtually. We've got possibly a consolidation in the supply side. So there's fewer airlines. So the result will be that airfares are going up. And I don't say that lightly. I live at the bottom of the world, so to speak. The elasticity of demand will tell me that probably there will be a bit less demand. So I think destinations can prepare for that. And we do this in New Zealand, where of course the recovery in the moment is exclusively domestic travel. Now, this is Amsterdam, and it's a donut. And if you haven't heard of the donut economics, it's a very interesting idea of having, for example, tourism in a space that recognizes the planetary boundaries like climate change, but also makes sure it contributes to the well-being of the local people in particular, and also the people who travel. So everyone wants to thrive as a result of tourism. And so when I say that air travel might actually reduce in volume, that doesn't mean it's the end of tourism. In fact, already 78% of all trips in the world, that includes domestic, are actually not by the plane. We often think of the plane as the one and only thing. It is important for some destinations, but generally the majority is actually by other means of transport. And in particular in Europe, where we had discussions around flight shame, the train has already become more popular. And I can see the good old car trip becoming again more popular. The recovery in most countries focuses on more local tourism. And the key is to get those core businesses up and running, accommodation, attractions, but also those parts that are really important for the local communities, like museums, galleries, parks, etc. So that's where, at least in my part of the world, also some of the recovery stimulus money goes to get those small businesses up and running. And I see that Syriza as a complete opportunity for contribution to sustainable development goals, and low carbon development if we invest in the right technology and foster those new types of business models. At the same time, and now I have to move us right in the middle of the donut, obviously there's a need for aviation globally. We need global connectivity, we need an efficient and sustainable network. But I think, and this is why I called my presentation Air Travel with a Purpose, I think we need to start treating air travel a little bit more like a scarce resource. I think we will all get very excited for our first plane trip again. It will become more special. We need to maybe ensure that those destinations that truly depend on aviation, like for example, small island developing countries, get a share of the carbon budget more so than maybe some other countries that don't need it quite so much. And Syriza mentioned around innovation and investment into new technologies. I think this is the time where it's absolutely critical that we invest into new types of fuels that allow us long-term to have some kind of aviation. And there will be e-fuels, synthetic fuels. So I think that is absolutely critical. And just to sum up, move us right here into the New Zealand forest. So I think tourism can contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. I think we need some serious changes, but they are completely on the table, and this is the time to do them. I would probably go two-pronged. One is to focus on the destination recovery, get the small business communities going again, avoid too big a dependence on long-haul travel, and at the same time fast-track investment into sustainable aviation fuel, so we can have high-value aviation for those trips where we need it. So that's probably where I stop and pass it back to you. I think I need to stop sharing here, Zorica, so we can all see each other again. And I will put myself on mute now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. And I think that you brought us to different skies, hopefully. Just to mention that we have the first space flight from the NASA SpaceX that is going to be launched today, later in the day. So it's just like a coincidence. But as I said, nothing ever will stop human being, always going further and always going faster. And I think your reflection and I can see thoughts are very interesting. We're really happy to receiving questions from the floor. Thank you, Suzanne. I think that as Adi showed in the value chain, I think the first entry point to any travel is change of places and transport, which you have covered, and you have given us some very interesting insight. I would like to invite Michaela to share with us when it comes to hosting visitors. Where do you stand? How do you see the connection, and how do you see the perspective and the future?
Thank you, Zorica. So I will start my presentation and show some pictures. It makes it always a little bit better to understand. If you can see what we are doing every day. So yeah, the Boutique Hotel Stadthalle in Vienna is a very sustainable hotel since 2009, when we built our passive house, and we are kind of a zero energy, not kind of, we are a zero energy balance hotel, but what we are, all are, we are green at heart. So here you see our garden. We have a very serene garden within directly in the center of Vienna, and we started in 2009 with that. Here you see our lavender roof. You see our bees. We have 7 people of the bees who are producing our organic honey that we need for the breakfast throughout the year. What we are doing, we are gaining our energy on our own with the solar panels that you see here in the back, with the photovoltaic panels that you see here in the back. Then we have solar panels and we have a heat water pump. So we produce as much energy as we need in our passive house. So that's what Zorica always says, that we are one step ahead, because we started with that in 2009, which was kind of stone age for sustainability. And here you see our garden. All the windows are facing the garden. Where we will, Austria is opening the hotels on Friday, and we will have culture performances here, and everybody has his own separate where he can sleep. So this is a separate and culture event that we are hosting the entire June to attract more people coming to Vienna and stay with us. Just a short, brief thing that I want to mention is that everything that we have in the hotel is organic. Not only the food, but also the drinks, the wine, the gin, whatever, the schnapps. So everything has to be organic. And what Zorica said before, that we should all invest in sustainability and in CSR. We are doing that. Every investment that we are doing has the same question that we ask: is it sustainable? Is it really according to CSR? I have to say yes, it's a little bit more, but on the other hand, I can encourage you all, because we are quite successful with this, and there are a lot of guests coming because of this, yeah, and they will, and that's what we experience. They are getting more and more. So our newest coup is the topic of my heart, which are the Sustainable Development Goals. We have 17 hotel rooms and I mean, we have 90 hotel rooms, but we have 70 new hotel rooms, which are dedicated to the Sustainable Development Goals. Every room is concerning one SDG. And we have kind of this slogan that says, come and reach your goals while you are sleeping. So all the furniture is made according to zero waste, is made upcycling on a social project, but here you see some of the parts that we installed already. So we are quite in the project now, and every day a new room is getting ready. So here you see the night shelf. This is of the SDG number 17, partnership for the goals, because if you're networking, then you sometimes have to travel. So this is why we have the suitcase here. And the other one, the lamp, is on the SDG good health and well-being. So this is the lamp that we are having there in the corner of the room. There are so many other things that we offer, and what we offer, and this was is according to that what Susan said. She said there could be a comeback for the travel by the car. What we are encouraging and what we are forcing is to travel by bicycle or by train. So if our guests arrive by bicycle or by train in our hotel, then they get a 10% bonus on their room rate. Whatever their rate is, if they book directly, then they get a 10% reduction. So this green bonus is something, you know, we pay more on green bonus than we pay on booking.com. So this is a good thing, I assume, because it's a completely win-win situation. And here you see the green facade that you also see in the back here. This is our facade garden. So on the people, or the rooms facing the street, and you see in the mirror of the windows, you see the house on the opposite street. All our guests facing the street, they have this beautiful facade garden, and it's kind of a no, I missed the word, but when you look out of your window, it's not only the house that you see on the opposite, but there's a frame, there's a green frame around your window. So, and for the other guests facing the garden, this is the garden. We are quite in the center of Vienna. A zero energy balance, and this green, serene oasis is not something that is for granted, but we have a lot of efforts we are doing every day to keep it like this. And when it comes to sustainability, there are not many hotels in Austria that are that green and that sustainable that we are. So I think there will be some other questions afterwards to this, perhaps if they about the things that we are doing.
Michaela, I'm sure I'm letting Zorica manage the flow and definitely to stimulate the discussion. The questions are already arriving. They're both on YouTube and here. I just wanted to add, Zorica, if maybe we can share with Michaela that as well in UNWTO, we have some rooms dedicated to the SDGs. So we tend to say, where are we going now?
Yes.
We're going to the One Planet, and now we're going to the gender equality, and now we're going to, you know, so we tend to do the same, not when we're sleeping, obviously, when we're spending time.
But here you reach your goals while sleeping, yeah, which is the good thing.
It's lovely.
Yeah?
Honestly, I mean, I honestly, Michaela, when I hear these things personally, Zorica, now I understand why you were telling me all these beautiful things, you know, definitely is one of these situations where you really want to go. And this is very much, it's very interesting when you make SDGs attractive, even in the storytelling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Alessandra. Thank you very much, Michaela, for inspiring us. And we definitely want to go there. Actually, we met with Michaela when UNWTO was developing an amazing online tool, a toolkit called Hotel Energy Solutions. It's still available online. It's very easy to use for SMEs. And Michaela was one of the hotels who was testing the toolkit we were producing and creating. So since then, we have been always in contact and following what each and everyone has been doing. I think great insight, Michaela. We're looking forward to the questions from the floor. The next panelist, I would like to invite Theo Caris for sharing with us what is today the sense of sustainable mobility at a destination level. It is a European Union project, Horizon 2020. It's an initiative on research and development, quite frontier in what is developed there. And this is maybe giving us some additional opportunity to see how the desire to travel can be satisfied in this situation where we still need to have social distancing and respecting certain protocols, and how this can go further for each and every one. Theo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Zoritza. Thank you all. This is very fantastic panel to discuss and present some ideas. I will try to give our viewpoint from a very, let's say, very important destination, which is called Creta, and also our experience from here, working mainly for destination and other European projects. Our team is working for more than 20 years, covering from the island point of view different viewpoints. I will not spend a lot of time for you for this point, but we're open to discuss and to give some answers for definitions. Thank you very much for this invitation. For me, it's an opportunity to show you and to the audience, the national audience, some very crucial viewpoints from the islands. Islands have a very attractive environment for tourism and also for guests and also the local people. They have to do what to do and how to respond to this fluctuation and seasonality. The seasonality is very important for us. So the cost is high, especially for infrastructure works. We have to adapt to different directives like clean energy package, but in parallel, the majority of the business here are SMEs, are family business. So we have not enough time to survive, not only due to COVID, but to any change. So they have not enough time to mature the innovation. This is the picture of Creta last winter. These were real pictures from there. This is what was the situation during the winter time, and this is what the guests want to see from this island, more or less in the same places. And also, this is COVID-19. This is something. Was a shock here. And we have to see how can respond. This is an opportunity, and yes, Zoritza, we can agree this is an opportunity. But for instance, is the Green Deal enough? I have saved a number that in 5 years we need to keep at European level 1 million charging stations for 13 million of e-vehicles. It is realistic? I'm afraid no. I'm not afraid now, not only due to the COVID-19. Due to destinations, to the Horizon 2020, we have created at the level of Creta green mobility demos, including business. Everything was innovative, including innovative business with IT applications. You can see also the scooters offline. And also maybe for people from Norway is not innovative, but for us to have green and electric cars, electric buses for guests and tourists was something new, very important. So we have created and integrate this was very important for us, integrate these kind of things in the local business. for instance, in the public transport operator of the island. We have also tools. One of the tools was created in cooperation with Zorica during the project called NEZE. We have the tools, we have a lot of tools. This is the reality there, but are these tools enough? In the picture, you can see different tools. If someone needs some definition, I can provide. Some challenges. Okay, the pollution was low, the sky was very clear, but what this has to do with climate change? What will happen with the rebound effect if during the recovery, the business will come back and cancel SDG achievements? The households learned distance shopping. We would like to be this from the neighborhood, but it was very often not to buy through e-shopping from local businesses, but from every place in the world, for instance, from China sometimes. Also, the traditional education is not enough to accelerate this recovery for the Green Deal and for COVID. I think we're in the middle of something very, very new. And the small island communities have not the capacity to respond. Maybe the academic people can imagine things and solutions, but the local people will have to degrade this and to make it realistic for the local people. And the scientific community tries to learn. We learn each week, we make experiments, blah, 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 blah. So we need something long-term. What is one of these? It's experimental monitoring. We, in some cases, in Crete, we have done this. We have created a system to monitor the quality of environment. So in terms of safety, in terms of traffic load, congestion, things like that, and combine meteorological issues with emissions. And we're happy to have this system for 3 years, so we can give some results. We need numbers, okay? This is also one graph in your left, showing the impact of tourism. So you can see the impact in Rethymno of tourism in NOx emissions due to tourism, due to take into account the month, or in your right hand, take into account the day of the week, which is important because we have the flea market. This is also a way to monitor how the people drive ecological or not. It's very easy and very cheap, and now we have the technology to show. These are results for the monitoring in Rethymno. And for me, this is important. We need numbers to show and to give solutions. This is also our example of our research. What happened with when the system was fully locked down? What happened before? What happened after that? We changed the behavior of the people, how they are commuting to go to work, to go to the campus, to go whatever it is. So have the real change, and we're going to publish things. Also, we need numbers. And also, this is something very good, a good message. They spend less time to go at work. Okay, this is something very good, but this is for the future. I'm not very sure. Also, what we need capacity building, certifications, and also transfer the information to the business case. And I'm afraid that the people, Michaela, you are part of front runners during this project, and I'm happy to work with Zorica and UNWTO on this project, but I'm not very sure that the majority of these businesses in tourism have the capacity and understand. So we need certification. You have to train the people, the business people in tourism to take care. And so have a lot of added value for this. So what we need, our approach, co-creation in people with small communities. Small communities are isolated, so have to work with people there. And our approach here is for sustainable mobility planning by using another Horizon 2020 project is work with everybody. So we include not only technical partners, but also business partners, the local municipal council, etc., etc. So we have to co-create, work at the local level. For me, this is important. And also it's important, as already referred, to integrate the local supply chain. And I'm happy to see Michaela's example. Here we try to create the so-called Cretan breakfast with local produced food, etc. So we have to create the full chain. And this is not very, very easy. No. So I'm coming back. This is my last card. I'm now in the conclusion. So we have opportunities, but the business community should adapt. I'm afraid if they will not adapt, they have problems. We need also numbers. So we need experimental monitoring systems to show the people, to prove the people what's going on. During COVID, once per day, we had very clear information from our government, which was the situation. So, but we need numbers for that. We have to change education training, especially to integrate more technical education and also certification. And also we have to work with local people, co-create to modify the mindset. And also something very important for me, I'm teaching for the last 20 years this course called Sustainable Development. Tragedy of Commons is a very important issue. So we need somehow to harmonize things. And a very bad example of our days are the fake news. So someone says that and says, I'm a scientist. The other side says something different. So at the end, middle of nowhere, the people say everything is lie. So we have to create credibility to the people and to have more harmonized and more global governance to face all the situation. And in my presentation, there are a list of some relevant literature. And thank you for your time. I will be here for any answer. Thank you.
Theo, thank you very much. I think you exploded our minds with like going in all direction, and I think for sustainable mobility, we have reached the target. I think that there is a lot of incredible opportunities and ideas. We will be looking at floor questions from participants, and I will invite now Peter and David. Can I ask you please to not exceed the time allocated? I'm sorry, I have been very bad at managing the overall time issue, but I'm dragged myself by the interesting presentations. Peter, can I invite you to share your views and future vision for tourism?
Yes, I will do so. Can you hear me and can you see my slide?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me to this excellent webinar. I think it's an enormous importance for this topic, particularly if you see that the whole world is talking very much in general about rescuing tourism. And I think that should be shifted to really targeted support for those tourism which supports the SDGs. So, and when you, Saritza, mentioned passion at the beginning, that we all have passion, I feel I had the privilege in my whole life that I could combine my passion with my job. I worked all the way for WWF and then later for Grid Arendal, which is closely connected to the UN. And so you have to achieve my presentation also from a very personal biodiversity perspective. I'm running an organization which is called Linking Tourism and Conservation, which is profiling the best cases you find in the world where tourism is supporting protected areas. And thereby we are directly relating to the Sustainable Development Goals. And I want to point out here that if we all want to achieve something concrete and would show what tourism can do concretely, they should not only refer to the 17 broad goals, they should go into the details of the targets under 169 targets of the SDGs. There is something for everybody and something for everyone who does tourism to look at where they can support concretely and in a measurable way. We at Linking Tourism and Conservation are the specific organization supporting the CBD goal, the Convention on Biodiversity, and the related SDGs 14 and 15, and thereby even more specifically the issue of protected areas, as protected areas are the most important tool to preserve biodiversity. When I look at UNWTO, and I'm preaching that all the time, as I'm very fond of the SDGs altogether, and as you explained in more detail, Saritza, tourism has really this unique position that it has the potential to support all the 17 SDGs. And I was just a little bit astonished that this is not coming out clearer from your reports, that you have actually a relationship to all the 17 SDGs and should not only restrict to those which have been coming out from recent questionnaires in a broader way. I'm also, from my personal perspective, and you see the graph here on the right down, that there are in particular the green or blue SDGs, which are representing water, climate, and the 2 biodiversity SDGs, which are essential. If you don't reach them, then you will not easily reach the social SDGs. And if you don't reach the social SDGs, you will not reach the economical one. I think there is a certain hierarchy, and as tourism also strongly refers to the climate and biodiversity SDGs, I see some priority there. Just one picture where you see where you can find the information what protected areas are in the world. That is done by the World Conservation Monitoring Center, which relates to or is part of UNEP. But where are we? We had this goal, which is part of the SDGs and is the so-called Aichi target 11 of the Convention on Biodiversity, that we should have achieved by this year 10% of the marine environment and 17% of the land, the terrestrial environment, protected. That hasn't been quite achieved and will be looked at the next COP of the CBD, and new targets will be taken. But the main problem is that many of the protected areas are just on paper. There are paper parks, and the figure which has been one estimated, but if there would be a complete network of protected areas as agreed, then it would cost the world $30 billion per year to manage that properly, which is only 0.4% of the world tourism turnover, at least the turnover in the past. And on the other side, IUCN has produced a figure that the protected areas in the world produce a revenue of $600 billion per year for tourism business, real estate, and other businesses around the national parks and so on. So if only 5% would be reinvested into protected areas, you would have been at the 30 billion, which is needed. The roots of the organization linking tourism and conservation have been on Svalbard 25 years ago, when we set a huge example where the cooperation of conservation organization and tour companies had a fruitful impact and outcome. A small campaign against the first long-distance road on Svalbard resulted that Svalbard is that Norway made it a state goal that Svalbard should be the best managed wilderness area in the world. They created new national parks, they have an environmental law, and they have an environmental fund where every tourist coming there automatically pays 150 kronas, and that is used in a transparent way to manage the best wilderness in the world. From there, we have developed over the years this organization, which today has showcased 40 different examples all over the world where tourism is supporting financially or also politically or via education protected areas. But such examples, and there are also other organizations like Panorama from IUCN providing good cases where some positive things are happening. But the challenge for all of this is to find incentives that these good examples are getting learned from by others and getting replicated. So that is an important message that particularly those which can provide finances should in the future look much more for cases where good example providers are coupling with example replicators to make it really happen that those good examples are getting replicated and multiplied. The present corona crisis shows in particular dependencies between tourism and protected areas, in particular in Africa. So there is a clear dependence, and therefore protected areas are important. And if you look at, which has been mentioned, at the biodiversity strategy of the EU, which has just been communicated 2 days before the World Biodiversity Day last week, as part of the Green New Deal, it clearly states that investing in nature protection and restoration is critical for Europe's economic recovery from the COVID crisis. And they state there that 20 billion a year should be unlocked for spending just on nature, and additional 25% of the EU budget, which is related to climate action. And the EU goes also in the lead of those countries or regions which are promoting for the new goal of the CBD to reach by 2030 at least 30% of the land and the sea being protected. So I clearly believe that this should be a blueprint for the whole world and other aid agency and other organizations to follow this great example. The EU is really in the lead in this. And investing in biodiversity supporting tourism could be a major part of solving the biodiversity crisis. An area where I have personally been involved in the past, which I strongly believe has the most potential to reach first all the 17 SDGs, is the Arctic, where the 8 Arctic countries work together within the Arctic Council and have a lot of programs which could be used to reach that vision. So that would be a specific region where also Europe is a major part of. So coming to my conclusion, and I'm referring also again to this picture I have here on the top, that the green-blue SDGs are more important than others. But altogether, if there are now unlocked major finances for rescuing tourism, and just today the EU has announced that a short-term release of 750 million euros will be used immediately, then they should support SDG supporting tourism, and that needs to be nearer defined. Or also SDG educating and inspiring tourism, where that is more explained what is meant by supporting SDGs. And as I referred to earlier, incentives and mechanisms that good cases of good practices, such as our LT&C examples, are getting replicated and multiplied. And of course, as some of you referred earlier, healthy tourism, bicycling, walking, nature exploring tourism should be very much in the focus. Climate and biodiversity friendly transport and infrastructure. And probably one could look at whether there could be, for instance, at the ITB, the biggest tourism fair, could be an annual event where the best examples of tourism supporting SDGs will be awarded on a Nobel Prize level, and make that for each of the 17 SDGs. And last not least, if projects, think tanks and organizations which proves to focus on promoting and convincing examples of practical solutions of sustainable tourism defined by SDG supporting tourism, then also the EU and other sources should clearly focus on those. That's my view. Thank you. I can't hear you, Tsuritsa.
Yeah, sorry. Hello, you hear me?
Yeah, now
yes.
we are there.
Thank you very much, Peter. I think you have shared with us some extremely inspiring options. Maybe the next destination we should go is the North Pole, and maybe we can go on the expedition with you. But let me as well say that this is really the beginning of the conversation. We know that your strong commitment, our understanding, and our I can say, dedication for moving into sustainability and biodiversity, linking to conservation for tourism, is a great step ahead, and that the EU initiatives will be definitely making our paths cross again and very soon. Thank you, Peter. David, can I ask you to join us? And please, I need you to be extremely efficient, but I know you can do that, and to be impacting, because time is running. It's 1:09 and we have 21 more minutes, including the questions. Sorry.
Perfect.
Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for letting me go last, because I think my my presentation will tie together some of the points that the other speakers have already made. So, and I'll keep it quick. So, I think in general, this crisis that we're in now has brought tourism into peril for now, but it also gives us a huge opportunity to choose how we want to build our destinations and our businesses going forward. So, I mean, this is the graph from the UNWTO, and I find it fascinating to see this. If you look at the global economic crisis or SARS, it's a little bump, but this year the arrivals and the tourism receipts really fell off a cliff. They're in free fall, and we've lost 20+ years of growth in the last 5 months, which has put everyone in a state of shock, let's say, personally, privately, as businesses, as destinations. And I think everyone wants to get back to normal. So at the moment we're in the crisis zone. It all started with complete chaos. There was no models on this. There was no thought leadership. No one had ever thought about anything like this quite so drastically happening. Now we're starting to come to terms with some of this, each country on their own timeline and in their own way. Are sort of struggling their way up towards what I guess we would call a new normal. And this crisis will still take some time, and it will take time for people to adapt to this. So the new normal will be different. I don't think we're going back to where we came from, but we want to get above that red line. We want to start coping with this new situation that we've been presented with. And hopefully over time we can find some balance, and we can adapt to what's going on, and finally sort of live in harmony with this. But I think one of the big points is that we have some influence on what this new normal looks like, and that's where I want to link back to the SDGs. I had the pleasure of working with Saritza on the and with some partners on the report that was the basis for this tourism for SDGs platform. And yeah, I agree with Peter. I mean, it's a strong point that tourism can really support and contribute to all 17 of the SDGs and really make a very positive impact. And it's about this balance between people, planet, and prosperity, making that link between these three sort of major elements and trying to balance them over time. And of course, the Paris Climate Agreement, the Earth Boundaries, donut economics. Thank you, Suzanne, for bringing that up. I think that's a brilliant example of something, a new model that we can work towards. These goals have not changed since the crisis. We're still trying to reduce or slow down climate change and live in this balance with the planet and with everything else. But what has changed at the moment is the priorities. This crisis has really brought people to a place where perhaps economic development or prosperity are being raised to the top of the priority list, while unfortunately in some places issues around especially the environmental goals are perhaps being left aside for now. So when we talk about recovery then, going forward, what do we really want to recover? And if you read the papers the last little while, it's about the economy, it's about lost jobs, the way we traveled. Everyone doesn't want to be confined to their little home anymore. Our mobility, we've had several great examples about that. So regional travel or global travel, this will open up slowly, but what do we really want back? Consumption habits that we had before, is that what we're trying to re-establish? are there any things that we don't want back? And I think that's where this opportunity comes from here with this reset, to really do some zero-based thinking and have a think about what are the things that we don't want to bring forward into the new normal. One of those things is, the environment has had a great break now. The environment, we've seen, and someone else mentioned it as well, we've seen the lowest CO2 emissions since about 2006, according to a Nature article. But the scary thing is that this drop that we've had now over the year, they're estimating 4 to 5% in carbon emissions. That's what we need to stick to for the next decade in order to achieve the Paris Climate Agreement, if I read it correctly. But the environment is a major stakeholder in how we plan tourism, because people have reported animals returning to cities, clearer air, less pollution, health benefits. And we really need to be aware of this rebound. After the global financial crisis, where CO2 emissions dipped as well, they came back even stronger because of this reprioritization and people putting the economy ahead of the environment. So this is just something to be aware of as we go into this recovery. And how about our communities? Also a very important stakeholder group. This is the irritation index. It's an old model, but I really like it. So as the number of tourists grows, the positive feelings that communities may have about tourists turn into apathy, irritation, and even antagonism. We've seen examples of this in Barcelona, in Venice, in other places around the world, where the local communities were really fed up with tourists. And right now they're in completely the opposite end of that scale, where they might be euphoric when the tourists come back. But will they accept tourists with open arms again, knowing what can happen if this goes on for too long? How will they react as the numbers start to increase again? And what have communities learned from these past growth experiences? So will communities actually allow tourism to come back the way it does, or do they want to transform the way they do business with tourists? And Theo mentioned this, how will we measure success? I think, what will our success look like? We need data, we need the right kind of data to really make these decisions, to see how we want to manage tourism going forward. How will we account for the burden that tourists place on destinations and communities? And there's been different examples of suggestions for measurement of this sort of sometimes invisible burden, sometimes quite an obvious burden, on destinations beyond tourism. And what indicators do we really want to maximize for? Is it arrival numbers? Is it receipts? Or is it really the sort of net contribution of tourism to a local community? Higher volumes, and I think that we've learned that from hotels and from businesses, but also from destinations, it reduces the experience, the quality of the experience that a destination offers. And people will talk about that. Providing good service these days is probably the best marketing you can do for your business or for your destination. So if we really let too many people back in, is that going to ruin the service quality? So perhaps now that we've got this opportunity, this reset, we can think more carefully about who we let in, for how long, and how we manage that price-wise as well. So, Quo Vadis, where do we want to go? Are we just going to recover and return to business as usual, get back on our aeroplanes, consume the way we used to do? Or in some cases, are we even going to regress? There is some examples out there where some countries or regions are looking at rolling back some environmental or social commitments in order to get the economy going, which short term might get people back into jobs, but might actually threaten the achievement of the SDGs in the long run. Or on the right-hand side, we have the opportunity to really transform where we go. And this has been discussed as reimagining, recreating, thriving. There's been various terms used for this, but basically it's transforming the way that we think about tourism and using the crisis as the reset to design a new normal, which would be more sustainable and in line with the SDGs. And we have a choice. Destinations and business have a choice, and it can work hand in hand with good business. So it's not one or the other. So if we practice the zero-based thinking, and these are my conclusions right here, you can plan this new normal. You can plan what you want your new normal to look like for your business, for your destination. Involve the communities and the environmental actors, because they are key stakeholders. And if you really want that balance between people, planet, and the prosperity, then they need to be at the table when you discuss these options. You need to set the right measures to track progress and impact. So some of these gadgets that Theo told us could probably help to make some of these assumptions more real. We need to work together, and we need to be kind. I think that was one of the very nice things during the crisis here in New Zealand, that we were told to be kind to each other, because everyone's going through this crisis. Everyone's having a hard time, so let's work together, build relationships, and get through this together. And finally, let's build some resilience and learn for the next crisis, because these are cyclical things. I mean, hopefully we will not see another huge crisis like this anytime soon, but the more resilient we can make our destinations and make our businesses, the better we'll be prepared for the next crisis. So Zorica, I hope that was in time, and we'll hand over for questions. Thank you.
Super. Thank you very much, David. I think you have brought us back to reconciliate with people and with each other, because I think this dimension of the human being, the personal feeling, the personal emotions, and the personal desire how to change and how to travel is totally embedded in a nutshell. And I think you have really stated the various aspects we have addressed in the final. That's why I actually chose to have you at the end, because going to the detail and then having it as a whole, I think allows for kicking on the conversation for further questions. I understand, Alessandra, that you have succeeded to secure 15 more minutes.
Well, I don't want to manage expectations here. Yes, no, in the sense that.
Thank you.
Zorica, thank you very much. Thank you all the panelists. I mean, it has been an incredibly dynamic and interesting flow of discussion. I don't recall, Zorica, having so much content in only one webinar. This is, yes, that's why Academy has been so kind to grant us a little bit of extra time, so we can also kick in with some questions from the audience, which my fantastic team has been collecting, and also Academy has been reverting to us. Some of them, what's interesting, I think, Zorica, is that, you know, when it comes to sustainability, there's a lot of wider scope, right? So people have, all of a sudden, they're brought into a much larger vision and view, encompassing many things. I mean, ending up now with David talking to us about feelings, which is something that they sort of tell us to exclude from the equation. Did you all hear me properly?
Yes.
Great. So I would like, first of all, Zorica, I would like to answer publicly on a question that was there on YouTube, which I think deserves a little bit of more echo. Yes, the platform Tourism for SDG is open for all. And Zorica will be, yes. And Zorica, as she said before, we need interaction, we need a space, it's a space of co-creation, we need your inputs. We are at UNWTO, we're at your disposal. By the way, I didn't introduce myself because I somehow take it for granted. I think like I'm showing off a little bit that people know who I am. I'm the regional director for Europe at UNWTO. And I'm very pleased, actually, we had comments, as it normally happens, from Japan and from many other countries in the world that are connected at the moment. I would now, taking from the questions, there's one very interesting question that came very much in the beginning, which says, will tourism business align their operations with the SDGs because it's good business and saves money, or because they care about future generations? Does motivation matter? Now, if I may put myself into the answering, and then of course I leave it to all of you, I would say that, this is why this question for me was very, very dynamic in a way, because I would say I don't understand why the two things should exclude each other. It's just about doing business differently and doing it finally for the better generations to come. But I leave it open for you guys to say a word. What do you think about this question from the panel?
You want maybe Michaela to answer? I can answer, but Michaela, maybe you want to say.
I've seen the hand of Theo as well that wants to say something. Theo Jerez.
I don't know, just typically speaking about sustainability has some pillars. One pillar is environment, another pillar is economy, and the third pillar is society. This is very typical and very, let's say, very heavy. So when we talk about the future, our future cannot be only with environment, but also we need the economy, we need transparency, of course, we need cooperation, we need new business development. Otherwise, there's no future. It's a future only for academic people or for students. So we need the full mix, operated and working together for the same, for SDG goals.
Excellent. Anybody else? Sarita, you also wanted to interact?
Yes, I think that the competitiveness is a key driver for businesses. Don't hide ourselves from that. And there is nothing wrong, because by being more competitive, you have more investment pouring from your stakeholders or your investors or your shareholders, because for some big company, it's number one. So, but in the same time, you reduce the footprint of your operations. And many times, these savings are invested in social initiatives, in doing good around you. It allows for having a breath of fresh air and liquidity and capacity to support the community around you. So I think, yes, we should be driven by competitiveness and sustainability. But Michaela, maybe it's your passion that has been driving you into this type of adoption of practices.
Yeah, and I want to say, and that what Alessandra also said before, it is not a neither nor, it is a as well as, yeah, because both can be, yeah, together. And what we had to learn, and I mean, we had to learn a lot, yeah, and we have a lot of experience now, but we learned that, yeah, you have higher costs, but on the other hand, you have a story to tell. So this can be your marketing costs as well, yeah, because if you have a story to tell, yeah, there's no reason to sell your hotel rooms or your destination or whatsoever via the price, yeah, and then you do not have to go down with your price. You can hold your price, yeah, and of course, that's what we also do, because we can tell a story. We have content, there are so many nice ideas. And the other thing is, all the innovation on sustainability drops in my hotel on the beginning, yeah, because everybody comes here and asks, what do you think about this? Can we do this? Can we do that? And we get a lot of funny ideas, yeah. And this is how we came to this SDG project as well, yeah, because somebody came and said, wouldn't this be an idea? So this is a fountain of ideas, and that's why I can all of you recommend to invest your patience and your passion and your money on sustainability here.
Thank you, Michaela. Actually, there was also another question addressed to you. Sorry, Peter. There was another question addressed to you in the audience that you somehow already answered in the chat of Zoom, but I just want to share it because this is another very interesting topic. It's about cost, all right? In general perception, there's this, I would call it, if you allow me, Michaela, a huge misunderstanding that when you invest in sustainability or when you implement sustainable practices, somehow you can mark up, or the consumers are expecting for the markup. In reality, most of the studies do recognize that there's an availability to spend more by the client, which means that the customers are starting to recognize the importance of such things and are rather going for that choice in respect to another one. But this doesn't necessarily mean that the services are going to be more expensive, because Michaela was just pointing out there was a question to say more sustainable hotels will have higher budgets, and Michaela was saying I'm a 3-star. So I think, Michaela, if you would agree with me, is is somehow exactly the opposite. It's about showing how sustainability in the long run, by benefiting so much the economy around, basically even allows to reduce costs, because that's the whole point. Correct?
Yeah, I completely agree. What we found out already is we do not have quantity on the buffet, for instance, and for breakfast, but we have quality, and people estimate it, yeah, because they say this is a choice of cheese we've never seen, but they have to cut it on their own. So they are not only sliced hundreds of slices of cheese, yeah, but everybody's slicing his own cheese, and that's why, you know, they know what they are doing, and they are taking care for that, yeah, and this is what we have to do.
This is now a bit of a tricky moment, not only because it's 1:30 and some of us, apologies for our panelists and the other side of the world, some of us are getting hungry.
Hungry, yeah.
But let me say that I don't want to think about it, because we enter now COVID-19 into a completely different phase, which is, I mean, I'm hearing there's going to be no buffets, we're going to have to wear a mask, no cutting, whatever. So I'm just keeping your image of the cutting the cheese for a little bit later. In my house and for next year, to make sure that if I cut the cheese, I don't need to be, how do I say, ozonized immediately after that happens.
Yeah, but in Austria, we may have buffets, yeah, for all the guests staying in a hotel, then we may have buffets.
Well,
I was from Friday
I'm just sharing this bits of internal sort of housekeeping, Zorica. This morning we were on the phone with our beloved focal points from Austria, discussing about, you know, how well Austria is advancing. And so maybe on our next trip to Austria, we'll be able to experience some of them. We will need to come to you to get the buffet, because there's going to be no buffets in Madrid, I can guarantee you. Now, I would like to pass the floor to Peter, who also wanted to react to this question. Yeah, is it correct, Peter?
Oh yeah, thank you. But I just wanted to react to the first question, that
yes, indeed,
what is motivating people to invest into SDGs, or what I strongly believe, and that has been also said by Michaela, that those which have already invested in SDG related activities, that they are also convinced that this is economically working out. And the more now the EU or others will also invest in those which are investing align SDGs, the more you get also motivation and the common understanding that this is a win-win for both the reaching the SDGs and the economy.
Thank you, Peter. By the way, I wanted to ask you if you can share with us, Zorica, what if we can, using the copyright of Professor Peter Prokosch, why don't we take his fantastic multi-layered SDG and, you know, maybe use it a little bit more, because I found that absolutely amazing and engaging.
Yes.
Shall we?
I totally share with you. I was going to ask Peter, actually, because I was actually hesitant to even use it, and I said no until we ask copyright. But it's a fantastic interpretation. It's the nicest I have seen.
Indeed, and
we have great minds.
And I never really reflected upon this. No, I think it's very interesting that he brought us to understand the multi-layer approach. Peter, I might dare to say that maybe your interpretation goes even further than the intentions of the UN. So, you know, it's really nice.
Just to say that, of course, you can use it, and it would be a pleasure if everyone can use it. It has been invented by a colleague at Grit Arendal, where we have been related to the UN. We have not made it official. It's still our private use, but if you would be using it more officially, or more would be use it, I think it would make sense.
And you have the right interlocutor. Zorica is definitely going to pick up on this and make it, she knows how to make.
We will organize.
Great.
One last question before I leave you guys. First of all, there's this perception in general. We're having people from India and from Japan commenting as well, to basically understand, or try to understand, where we're going in terms of volume and recovery. We all speak recovery right now. In UNWTO, we're actually speaking restart, because we want to go beyond recovery. We want to reinstate a little bit of confidence. I mean, when we speak to people like Michaela, definitely the confidence is back. but we do understand that the world is not going at the same pace. So there's a very interesting question that says, the forecast from Benjamin, he's saying, the forecast from IATA, PATA, UNWTO suggests that tourism volume will recover fully in 3 to 5 years, with growth actually accelerating and sustainability falling off the agenda. So this is another very interesting question, because again, we are in front of a dichotomy. People are starting to ask this question. They're saying, okay, we will recover. Everyone's going to speed up to recover. Are we really going to be taking care of all these elements? I can add another element of provocation for all of you here. Look at what was happening before COVID-19. We were heavy on no plastic. We were heavy on, pollution and, recycling and everything, waste management. And now everything is plastic. The new waste is masks, who are easily dropped on the street. I think, David, it has to do also because of this anxiety that we all have, this antagonism, this walking away from each other. And, it does feel like sometimes fearful to think that we will be so brave to actually say, wait a minute, we've gone here because we haven't done X, Y, Z. We need to do it differently. We need to do it slowly. And obviously UNWTO has a huge responsibility in this. But, what is your opinion?
I think it's really important when we talk about recovery timeframes that there's obviously so many components of tourism, and there will be different parts. And I think, Peter, you mentioned that some parts that really make a great contribution. And Michaela, you talk about your accommodation, and I think people always want to travel, but some parts may not recover as much. And I think we need to be quite careful when we talk about that, and not to equate then or say, for example, my points around aviation do not mean that tourism can't go back to the previous levels or will even continue to grow. And there's a great opportunity to foster that. I think those comments around sustainability and maybe plastic, it's actually also the opportunity for governments to put in place policies to make sure that this regrowth and restart goes down the right direction, and that we prevent some misuse or some wastage that is occurring. So I think governments obviously have a window of opportunity to put things in place to promote certain types of behaviors or good practice, where we already have so many case studies, but what we want is to mainstream some of those really good ideas.
And
go ahead.
May I?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that it could be a great opportunity, and this is what Suzanne said, a greater opportunity also for the governments to support green investments, because now it is always the question, what are the governments supporting in the economy? So please, point to green investments or support, give a better support to those with green investments, with some sustainable investments, because there are so many examples that people can follow, and there are so many ideas, and they sometimes need the money to do that. So this is to all the governments, this could be a great chance for all of us, and especially for the tourism, because I do not know who said this, but tourism is one of these branches that follows every SDG, and I think that's why we should focus on tourism.
Tourism has the potential to support all them, but it is not doing it everywhere. But we should just realize that the 190 countries which decided on the SDGs did a wonderful job. This is the best set of goals which ever have existed for the future we want. But it has also the goal number 8, which is often misinterpreted, because that just says economical growth. And if you follow the present discussions how to rescue tourism, it is mainly focusing on this one, as jobs have to be created and recreated and so on. And I think one needs to be honest and say that if we want to reach the future we want, then one should probably not support those kinds of tourism which are not in line with the SDGs.
Thank you, Peter.
May I?
I think, yeah, yes.
Well,
Quickly, yes. A final word for everyone.
For us, it's not a problem of support, financial support. It's a problem of mindset. So the personal responsibility to change the behavior of the people, how they react, and then if everyone will be responsible for that, personal responsibility we call it, I think we'll see another future. So we need to work to change the mind of the people. This is my point.
Thank you. Alessandra?
Great. No, I was hoping, you know, I was waiting for all you guys to have this final round of question. Thank you so much. I think that Zorica, it's kind of nice to finish this, just anticipating one thing and tapping onto one of the questions, which is more related, of course, to the European Union. The European Green Deal, as you know, has finally picked up on tourism. I would say also thanks to us pressuring, and of course, COVID-19 has done its huge part. We have to somehow thank the virus, if you allow me the provocation. The EU Green Deal will feature a lot of importance on this. Now with tourism finally, it didn't make sense before that it wasn't there, but the tourism being encompassed within the different sides and the different aspects of the strategy, definitely we are seeking a much larger space of cooperation. And we really hope that today in the afternoon, the European Commission will announce gazillions for tourism, as they have been promising. As I said today in a radio interview that I was giving for Radio Uno, what I am always very skeptical, you know, when there was the big euphoria about 20-25%, skeptical in which sense? Because I do know how EU funding works. Zorica, I think you can join me in this. What is important, what we feel is important now is that whatever support comes now, because the way that the EU funds work might imply some delays. And we've all been saying this, that delaying means a lot of SMEs, a lot of the natural texture of the tourism sector will practically disappear. So once again, money is important, economy is important, reviving and restarting is important. But we do hope that we will be able to, when we reinitiate all our businesses, we will be able to remind ourselves what got us here, and make sure that we will do each one in our little part, starting with going back to basics, our contribution to make sure that we all go for a better future. And obviously, for us, SDGs is the pop song that will lead us to this, right, Zorica? So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Thank you, everyone that was live with us until now. Apologies, we've been running a bit late. It doesn't happen that often to have all these panels. Thank you, Zorica. You've been absolutely fantastic in putting all this together.
Thank you to everyone. Thank you to you.
Each one of you. And now let's go and cut some cheese for ourselves, yeah? So
Michaela,
thank you.
She's invited.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.